You had to fight tooth and nail to task 141. Every glance, every whispered conversation, every skeptical look thrown your way had been an obstacle. But you had proven yourself tenfold. Through your skill, resilience, and sheer determination. You weren't just the only woman in 141, you were one of them. Soap, though, had been different from the start. Unlike some of the others who had taken their time warming up to you, Soap had been on smiles and laughter from day one. He treated you like an equal, never hesitating to joke around or offer encouragement, and his effortless charm. The kind that made people feel at ease, and yet it wasn't just his humor that made you notice him. It was the way he fought, the way he looked up for his team, and the way he... Oi, you listening? You blinked, snapping out of your thoughts. Soap grinned at you from across the room, arms crossed over his chest. I was listening. You lied, shifting in your seat. What'd I just say? Something Scottish, you replied. Soap laughed. The rich sound filled the room. You're hopeless. Bryce cleared his throat, cutting off your banter. As I was saying, he continued, giving you and Soap a pointed look. We've got intel on Maverick's next move. We'll leave it at 500. You straightened up, refocusing on the mission that came first. The air was thick with tension as the helicopter touched down. You gripped your rifle, your pulse ready despite the chaos waiting below. Stay close. Ghost's voice crackled through the comms. An objective was simple. Infiltrate, retrieve, intel. Get out. But things never really went according to plan, did they? Gunfire erupted the moment you reached the facility. The world narrowed into flashes of movement, the deafening soar of bullets, the sharp sting of adrenaline. You moved in sync with Soap, covering each other's back. Right side clear, you called out, pressing against the cold concrete wall. Moving up, Soap replied, his voice steady despite the danger. The two of you pushed forward, cutting through enemy forces with practiced precision. Then the explosions hit. A shockwave threw you off your feet, plane flaring up your side as debris rained down. Your ears rang and your vision swam, despite you heard shouting. Then strong hands pulled you up. Stay with me, Bunny. Soap's voices cut through the haze. I'm good. You rasped out as the ground beneath you started to wobble. His gaze flickered over, assessing you. You're a terrible liar. Still, he didn't argue. He just tightened his grip and pulled you forward. You weren't seriously injured, but Soap hadn't left your side since the mission had ended. I told you. I'm fine, you muttered, sitting on the edge of your cot. Hey, and I told you you're full of shit, Soap countered, arms crossed. You rolled your eyes, but a small smile tugged at your lips. His concern was endearing, even if he was extremely overbearing. You know, he said softer now, you scared me out there. Your breath hitched. Soap wasn't usually serious, not like this. I had it under control, he replied, but it lacked conviction. He scoffed. It's not the point. Silence stretched between you. His blue eyes held something unreadable at first, something that made your heart beat just a little bit too fast. Finally, he exhaled, shaking his head with a stubborn chuckle. You're so stubborn. Takes one to know one, you replied back. That earned a smirk. Eh? Fair enough. He stood, ruffling your hair before you could stop him. Rest up, yeah. Can't have my best partner kneeling over. You huffed, swatting at his hand. Go away. But you didn't miss the way his fingers lingered just a second longer than necessary. The night in the barracks were always quiet, save for the occasional distant murmur of conversation or the low hum of machinery. You weren't sure what kept you awake tonight. Maybe it was the mission, maybe it was the unspoken weight between you and Soap, or maybe it was the fact that he was currently sitting beside you, closer than usual, his presence warm in the dim light. You ever think about what comes after this? He asked suddenly. You frowned. After what? All of it. The fighting. The missions. He exhaled. The war. You hesitated. I don't know. It wasn't something you allowed yourself to think about. The future was uncertain, and in your line of work, it wasn't promised. So pumped, nodding. Yeah, me neither. Silence settled again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Then his hand brushed against yours. A small touch, tentative, but it sent a jolt through you like a live wire. You didn't pull away, and neither did he. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. If this all ended tomorrow, what would you do? You turned to look at him, at the way his features glue in the dim light, highlighting the faint scars and exhaustion in his eyes. I don't know, you admitted. But I think I'd want you there. The words hung between you, heavier than any bullet you'd ever faced. Soap instantly, sharply inhaled, his fingers curling around yours. Aye, he murmured, a small, disbelieving smile tugging at his lips. Me too. And for once the battlefield didn't seem so lonely. But the morning came too soon. By the time dawn broke, neither of you had moved. Soap fingers still rested gently against your own. The ghost of last night's confession lingering in the air, but reality waited, and duty called. You stood stretching. We should get ready. Soap watched you, something unreadable in his gaze and a smirk. He said something. I wouldn't want Price yelling at us. You rolled your eyes, but your heart felt lighter. As you turned to leave, his voice stopped you. Am I in? You glanced over your shoulder. He hesitated, then softer, almost vulnerable. Stay close today, yeah? You didn't need to ask what he meant. You just nodded. Always. It had been a while since that happened. Despite barely sleeping, you felt awake. There was energy in your body, settled but undeniable. Maybe it was from the adrenaline still lingering from the last mission. Or maybe it was the way that Soap had looked at you last night, his fingers just barely brushing yours. His voice softer than you'd ever heard it. You didn't know what to make of it, but right now you couldn't afford to dwell on it. You pulled your gear back on and headed to the briefing room, shaking off whatever thoughts always tried to creep in. The mission came first. Always. Soap was already there, arms crossed, looking over the map with Ghost and Price. His eyes flickered to you in the moment you entered. Morning, he greeted, with a smirk like nothing had ever changed. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe it had. But you ignored it. Your heart stuttered. Morning. Price cleared his throat, giving you both a look before tapping the map. We got a problem. The objective of this mission was straightforward. Extract a high-value target before enemy forces closed in. Simple in theory, but theories never really held up in the field. You moved through the abandoned village, the cold biting at your exposed skin. The buildings were crumbling and the streets were eerily silent. The sign of silence only came when something went wrong. You kept close to Soap, moving in sync like always. Too quiet, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, he agreed, fingers tightening around your rifle. Then, gunfire. An ambush. The world erupted into chaos as bullets rained over. You delved behind, cover returning fire as shadows began to move between buildings. We need to move. Ghost's voice cut through the noise. Soap was already pulling you forward with a grip on your vest. Stay with me. You didn't argue. But the two of you pushed ahead, weaving through gunfire. The extraction was up close, but the enemy was lining up. Then, a sharp pain tore through your side. You gasped, stumbling as blood soaked your gear. Soap was there in an instant. Shit, you hit. You gritted your teeth, but the plane was flaring through you. It was no time to argue. The enemy was closing in. You could hear Price barking orders even over the comms. Soap wrapped an arm around you, half dragging you forward. We're getting you out of there. Despite the pain, despite everything. You hoped he would be able to get you through. Because you really, really didn't want to die on a battlefield, soaked in your own blood. What's gonna happen? the question you asked yourself.